Right, our top story first. A two-member bench of the Madras High Court, including Chief Justice Manindra Mohan Srivastava, has passed interim orders restraining Brigade Enterprises from continuing construction on its recently launched residential project in Chennai till the 12th of November. The project in question, Brigade Morgan Heights, is a joint venture between the developer and a local landowner and has been at the eye of a storm in the recent past over allegations of it making incursions into an ecologically sensitive water body in the vicinity. Now, trouble first came around the horizon for Brigade when a Chennai-based environmentalist NGO called Arapur Iyakam first submitted documentation pointing to the Tamil Nadu government allegedly colluding between departments and approving authorities to give the project the green signal. Not long later, the AIADMK's legal wing then filed a public interest litigation in the Madras High Court asking that the developer be ordered to cease construction of the project itself. Now, what's the contention really? In simple terms, a Ramsar site. Now, a Ramsar site is an internationally acknowledged designation given to a water body that is considered ecologically sensitive and must thus not be the site of any construction or industrial activity. The Pallikarnai marshland next door to Brigade's upcoming Morgan Heights project was declared a Ramsar site in 2022. The allegation now is that Brigade's construction activity has made incursions into this ecologically sensitive water body. The project in question, Brigade Morgan Heights, is a premium to luxury project in Chennai. It was meant to see 1,250 homes enter the primary residential market in the city over the next half a decade. Brigade will now have to put a pause on construction as per the court's orders till November 12th, until that is the court resumes hearing that PIL. Keeping with court action now, the Supreme Court has stayed a decision by the Karnataka High Court that had directed multiplexes to maintain detailed, auditable records ahead of a challenge to the state's July 2025 rule capping movie ticket prices at 200 rupees per ticket. Now, for better understanding, here's how these events have panned out from earlier this year. In July, Karnataka had announced a price cap of 200 rupees per ticket at multiplexes to promote local language films. Now, this was summarily challenged in the courts and a stay on the order was issued by the Karnataka High Court's division bench. At a later hearing, the bench refused to lift the stay on the 200 rupee price cap announced for the state, but also placed conditions on multiplex chains, including asking for these businesses to issue numbered receipts for cash sales, collect customer IDs, and prepare digitally signed consolidated reports if at all a refund was eventually ordered. The court said the stay on the price cap would be valid and would apply only if these conditions were met. These orders were summarily challenged in the Supreme Court. Today, in what is widely being seen as a relief to multiplexes and cinema owners, the Apex Court has finally stayed these orders that call for such auditable records to be maintained, which means no price caps will be in place, nor will there be any conditions calling for multiplexes to maintain auditable records of ticket purchases that simply happen over the counter. On to news from quarterly earnings now. Bengaluru-based United Breweries Limited has reported a fall in standalone revenue and EBITDA for Q2. PAT and EBITDA margins were also down year-on-year. Numbers from North India were tepid owing to widespread floods, the company said, and UBL has also said that businesses and operations at breweries were gravely impacted by the monsoons. Speaking exclusively to ET Now, Vivek Gupta, Managing Director and CEO at UBL, said he is confident of gradually improving gross margins, even as he hopes green shoots will take form and shape in the Maharashtra market. Let's listen into a slice of that conversation.
Maharashtra is doing extremely well for beer right now. We are seeing almost 16 to 17% growth in the beer business, and it's accelerating. The recent policy where beer got more equitable treatment is helping. In Karnataka, we are really concerned on the category. Karnataka is a state capital for beer and has served the country and consumers extremely well. However, in the last 5 quarters, there has been consistent tax increase on beer, which meant the affordability on beer is a big challenge in Karnataka. We are in discussions with the regulators. We are sharing the information and sharing the data, and we hope that with some interventions, we see a recovery in the category in Karnataka. But right now, Karnataka category in beer is a concern.
Moving on to news from the general news space, a tragedy has unfolded in Telangana's Rangareddy district where at least 20 people have been killed and several others injured when a gravel-laden tipper truck collided head-on with a state-run bus service on the Hyderabad-Bijapur highway. The bus in question was reported to be carrying around 70 passengers from Tandur as it made its way to Hyderabad. The gravel that fell off the truck on collision is believed to have trapped multiple passengers. Now, rescue personnel have been hard at work through the morning to cut through the wreckage and recover both mortal remains and those injured. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has condoled the deaths, and the state government has announced a compensation of 2 lakh rupees for each individual who had succumbed to that tragedy taking place in Telangana. Moving on now, tech companies may be hard at work ensuring across-the-board AI adoption, but the biggest opportunity yet may come from the BFSI sector. That's because banks are hardly scratching the surface when it comes to investing in AI adoption. At least that's the word coming in from Chennai-based Intellect Design Arena's CTO of AI. Earlier this week, I caught up with Deepak Dastrala, who spoke to me about how the slow pace of AI regulation in banking may be one reason for the lag, and that it would only be a matter of time before the BFSI sector catches up. Let's listen into a slice of that conversation.
I think LLMs is a great start, but if you see right now, even the one that who built LLMs, like in OpenAI or Anthropic, all of them started focusing on the enterprises. They all started moving beyond a model company and they're becoming a product company and the platform company. And in fact, if you see, Google also recently hired a kind of someone from a chief business and the chief product and the business officer from someone from a consulting world. So the great opportunity is there in the how we can roll out an AI from an enterprise perspective, and that is where there's a big opportunity. And India as a talent capital, how we can actually figure out how our talent can be really kind of enabled for this AI native journey for all these enterprises. And also, again, for me, what I strongly believe is the model will be only like a 2% or 5% of it, because to operationalize something in enterprises, you have to really get all the 9 yards right. So AI is more of an engineering problem rather than the data science problem. Not to underestimate the work on data science, but if you really want to operational in a bank or a financial services, which is a highly regulated industry, you really need to get so many things right. And also the another important thing is right now, even if you look from an infrastructure perspective, the current infrastructure, whether it's a cloud infrastructure or any other infrastructure, that is largely built for the applications, not for the agents. And there is a huge opportunity out there. And today when I came to this event, I saw like a lot of people are kind of innovating on the database space and the observability space, the monitoring space and all. So I see there is a huge opportunity for India to build the products for the agents and kind of pick up those infrastructure problems that are yet to be solved for the agents. And because everything is reset right now, so I strongly believe the model is only like a 2 to 5% for the end-to-end outcome, and how we can actually build those products and the platforms that we can make the enterprise actually enable for this agentic AI journey, and they becoming an AI native enterprise is a huge opportunity for India.
Right. Interesting insights there. But if I could just talk to you a little bit about the BFSI sector, which I believe you also, Intellect is greatly involved in. The fact remains that only a very small part of spend at present is towards AI. In fact, 40% of spend is towards operations. Is there a massive opportunity here in the BFSI space itself waiting to be tapped? And could that be fertile hunting ground for companies much like Intellect and some others, and so far as tapping this potential that exists for newer AI?
Absolutely, like this exactly is the opportunity that we are behind. In fact, as you rightly said, right? I mean, any bank or a financial services, their spend on technology is only 11 to 17%. 40 to 47% of the spend is on operations, and that's exactly the white space that we are actually working in all. Because being in the BFSI, having the products across the consumer banking, corporate banking, and commercial insurance, the operations are adjacent to us. And that's where we are focusing on how actually the agentic AI can really disrupt or reimagine the operations for the agentic world is a great opportunity, and that's where we are into. And that's where probably a lot of other players also can come and actually tap the opportunity. Because India, with probably so much of work that we have done, think about we are kind of serving only the 10 to 11, 17% space. Now, if the 40% space is open, I think there's opportunities much bigger.
Right. It's very interesting again that you talk about the opportunities in BFSI. In fact, a lot of banking financial services tech firms that I've been speaking to in the recent past have also told me that with regard to banking itself going AI native at an enterprise level, the timelines could in fact see some dilation. In fact, AI adoption is okay insofar as banks, especially the customer service space, is concerned. 2 to 3 years could well be the timeline. But in terms of turning fully AI native, given the large volumes of documentation that banks sit on, it could well take 5 to 7 years to actually go about adopting and turning AI native fully. Is this timeline accurate? And if yes, does that put a lot more pressure on tech firms to go about ensuring that compliance, governance, all of this is in place before banks actually make the switch?
Absolutely. I think again, if you see right, the whole change management and governance has to be central strategy for AI to be operated in the banks and all. Because if you look into it, right, and that is one of the challenge, right? While the consumer world is actually adopting the AI at a breakneck pace, that's not really getting replicated in the enterprise space. Because reason is the if you see right, I mean, if your foundations are not really meant for the agentic and AI world, you can't fundamentally change the difference, make a difference and all. So this is where I think the banks have understood what they really need to do from their talent capital perspective, their change management perspective, their process perspective, to be ready for this kind of a journey. That is where some kind of a work is happening, but they really didn't got the whole enterprise ready for this kind of a change, and that is the reason it will take so long. And also another challenge is, if you see, there is a no clarity from the regulations perspective on some of the area. That is also stopping the bank to really put the things in a production and all. So a lot of work is happening on a internal facing use cases, but external facing use cases, they're really trying to understand the regulations and see, and also trying to get their system and the process ready for kind of a thing. And but again, everyone kind of understood the need for it, but the pace of change, right, I mean, because they're already very big and they already have an existing priorities. This is where I see probably the budget for the run bank versus change bank versus innovation will differ from this year, and they'll make them ready for. But I strongly believe it will take anywhere between 3 to 7 years, depending upon the kind of a bank and the size and the complexity.
And I hear you when you talk about how regulatory, mechanisms will, of course, take time to fall in place, especially on the AI front, which is still so much of a sunshine industry as we see it today. But very quickly, I also have to ask you: is there some sort of apprehension? 2 weeks ago, you remember the Deloitte case, which saw, 237 pages of a consultancy report with large portions of it, including AI hallucinations, that were called out even as that report went about being published. Is this a potential risk in the BFSI space insofar as usage of AI is concerned? And is that apprehension what is holding banks back?
I definitely think some of those apprehensions are real, and actually that's holding them, not only from this particular Deloitte news perspective, but also the other newses that they would have heard, because this is where everyone is figuring out what does that mean for the each particular process, each particular task that out there, where they're comfortable to bring AI, where they're not, and also, right, I mean, that understanding as a bank, as a in complete, and also the what are the various divisions and all, that is still evolving and all. But I think the truth is everyone understood that it can't be ignored forever, because like this is going to fundamentally disrupt how the businesses will compete, how the products and services will evolve, and this will bring a new category out there. So the way is how you can carefully understand the regulations and continue to experiment and be ready the moment the clarity comes in to really go out there and all. So the lot of work is going in terms of getting the foundation in place and getting the understanding in place, getting the talent ready for this kind of a journey.
Right. Last question I have to ask you: in terms of guardrail itself, so as to ensure that you have foolproof AI, if that ideal state can in fact be achieved about, what are some of the key criteria that AI companies will have to think about to ensure that you have proper guardrails that ensure that hallucination-free AI models can in fact be built?
No, absolutely. I think, see, right now, there is a, if you see, right, for anything to be operational in AI, especially highly regulated industry, you have to have you have to look at it a much more holistic manner. So hallucination is one of the important part, but there are many other things, right? I mean, for example, because a lot of the data that these models are built is not on the, if I take an Indian context, not on the Indian context, and they can probably, you can see them as a more of a mind to leverage, but not only the expertise to leverage. The expertise has to be contextualized for that particular bank, for that particular guidelines, for that particular domain and all. So the guardrails has to be more holistic than at probably one way. And this is also like there is a certain kind of an understanding right now what they're comfortable with. But I think this is where how you can test it, experiment it, and have this AI kind of an use it as a more of an augment is not from pure productivity perspective, even to understand what is the possibility, what are the risks. Right. That will give everything. So like a little bit like running like a model bank, where a kind of an AI led versus a human led, and constantly how do you validate that where the AI is going wrong, even to purely to experiment and figure out the risks. I think that's what will give the lot of clarity on what the holistic guardrails for the bank looks like.
Well, Deepak, the Strala telling me that there's a massive upside to be had insofar as AI adoption in banks is concerned. But if it's merely adopting AI tools, then you could probably see a 2-year horizon before banks turn, AI savvy. But an across-the-board enterprise level of adoption vis-a-vis banks and AI could well take anywhere between 3 to 7 years, largely because of the regulations involved, including the fact that banks will have to scale up their technology spend from present-day levels. But the fact does remain that existing problems with AI, including AI hallucinations, are a massive factor that's standing the way of preventing an overly regulated or a highly regulated sector like the BFSI sector from going all in on AI itself. Now, keeping with AI, if there's one industry that sees disruption like no other, it's the entertainment space. Remember when music videos threatened to kill radio and when Netflix came close to knocking the cinema right off its feet? Well, there's another disruptor on the horizon, and it's AI-generated micro-content. Now, we're talking visuals and end-to-end production that would normally take a studio large timelines and deep pockets to produce, but are now being democratized with the use of AI. And at the heart of it all is a Bengaluru startup called Dashverse, whose CTO Samyadeep Mukherjee told South Central that he expects the market for this content to grow from $100 million to $500 million in a few years' time. Here's a slice of that conversation.
If you look at just the top 5 apps in India, I think together they're probably doing north of 100 million already in India. And my sense is that at least like this is going to grow to 500 million in the next few years. That's the estimation that whatever market research we have done has got us to like at least 500 million in the next few years is what we think this entire revenue base will go to.
Right. And what are key growth areas like for you, Samyadeep, as far as the AI-generated micro-content space is concerned? Of course, micro stories have done well, especially post-pandemic, but add the whole AI angle and you have, I'm guessing, the best of both worlds. But what are the key focus areas and growth areas that can power growth going forward?
So firstly, I would like to say that AI is just an enabler, it's the stories and the format that people are so much more loving and adopting so fast. So AI is just a way that you just explode the creation capacity and that way more people create, way more people tell their stories, and that is what I think is the growth enabler in the next few years. That just if every one of us who has their story starts making their own stories, then they will bring their own audience. You will find far more content that you like and far more engagement. And
interesting. So it all boils down to the quality of storytelling, and that is the key growth area.
Yeah, 100%.
So going forward, what kind of VC interest do you see as far as microdrama in the AI-enabled space is concerned? You recently secured funding. We'll discuss that in a bit. But in terms of pure play VC interest in this space, where do you see a lot of interest lying? Which segments and which areas do you see a whole lot of VCs ready to cough out the big bucks?
So I think VCs look for returns, right? And anything that gets them returns in a better format is what they're looking at. So microdrama is growing fairly fast and fairly from an adoption standpoint. But if the growth is limited by production capacity and live action production, it gets hard. It gets hard after a point, which is where making AI the enabler to get any story and anyone to create is where we are focusing a lot of it on, and that's what is getting a VC more excited, because like your growth is not capped by what you can produce, but what the world can produce.
Right. And in keeping with that itself, because you've just raised 13 million by way of your most recent round of funding, where will that money be deployed? What are some of your focus areas? And where will you specifically look to double down, given the funding scenario you're in, having just raised funds?
Right. So most of it for us is around making content creation easier, which is around our AI capabilities and tools and technology development, because we are still in the early journey of AI, of how to build a consumer tool where anyone can actually tell their own story, and that's where most of our focus is, which involves product and engineering, research, and even GPUs. So that's where most of our funding goes to usually.
Right. And what are some of the key customer insights you've picked up on in your journey thus far? I know for a fact that it is, of course, the sunshine industry. Growth potential is limitless, like you just said. But in this time that you've spent in the AI-generated micro-content space, what are some of the big learnings that you've taken for yourself in terms of consumers, consumption patterns, and what are these insights all about?
Yeah, so something that we wanted to know very early on is that where does short drama fit in the spectrum from like a TikTok or an Instagram Reels to a Netflix or even a Bollywood movie, right? And more we have talked to consumers from a consumption pattern, and more we have understood how they are consuming this kind of content. It seems it is closer to a TikTok and Instagram Reels kind of a behavior than appointment viewing is how we term it in the Netflix or Bollywood behavior. So that's something, and that is also driving why we are so bullish on getting more people to create. Because that is the kind of velocity you need of the content.
Right. So in keeping with that key customer insight itself, what are some of the genres that have tended to do well as far as microdrama is concerned? And more importantly, how diverse is this? What's in the pipeline from an overall industry perspective? We'll come to what you're doing in just a bit. But just in terms of the overall industry, which are the genres that are doing well? And what's in the pipeline, really?
So I think today the genres that are doing well is what people are creating, because and right now everyone is creating like romance/drama type of content. We are slightly changing that because we are using AI so heavily. We can do something like a racing drama, like a car racing drama that we created recently. A couple of shows that we have on that, because that's very hard to do production on. Like it's almost impossible to get that on. The next thing that we are betting a lot more on fantasy, because fantasy has insane amount of imagination that people have, and then if you can actually produce it, which was never possible before, it's practically like opens up an entire new world.
Right. So what's Dash versus product pipeline, or launch pipeline rather, looking like insofar as these plans are concerned? Fantasy and racing, like you mentioned, typically high production content in the live action space with the help of AI, making it all the more easier to produce. So what's the pipeline like? How many titles? What's in it for your audience?
Right. So firstly, from a Dash first standpoint, the first thing that we actually want to unlock is the launch of our creation tool, which is called Framio. And that is probably the key milestone that we are looking at, to launch it in India and give it to Indian creators and see what they create firstly, because we believe that's where the major growth potential is. While internally we are launching a couple of fantasy shows, so that seeds in the kind of content that you can create with Framio. Right. So that's what we are hedging more on.
Right. Do you have any outlook on how many titles you want to put out there in the near to medium term?
So our aim is to get to like 100 by end of year, and yeah, that's where we are.
Well, I managed to catch a glimpse of that AI-generated content in the racing space that Samedeep was talking about there, and I can assure you the similarities to real-life, live-action content is as unbelievable as it can get. Well, with that, it's all about all the time we have on this episode of South Central. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you tomorrow for more news and updates from the region. For the moment, it's goodbye from us.